envious, but who is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, who is free from false ego and equal both in happiness and distress, who is always satisfied and engaged in devotional service with determination, and whose mind and intelligence are in agreement with me, he is very dear to me. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Coming again to the point of pure devotional service, the Lord is describing the transcendental qualifications of a pure devotee in these two verses. A pure devotee is never disturbed in any circumstances, nor is he envious of anyone, nor does a devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks that one is acting as his enemy due to his own past misdeeds. Thus it is better to suffer than to protest. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated, whenever a devotee is in distress or has fallen into difficulty, he thinks that it is the Lord's mercy upon him. He thinks, quote, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I am suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that I am not getting all the punishment I am due. I am just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is always calm, quiet, and patient, despite many distressful conditions. The devotee is also always kind to everyone, even to his enemy. Nirmama means that a devotee does not attach much importance to the peace and trouble pertaining to the body, because he knows perfectly well that he is not the material body. He does not identify with the body. Therefore, he is free from the conception of false ego and is equiposed, both in happiness and distress. He is tolerant and he is satisfied with whatever comes by the grace of the Supreme Lord. He does not endeavor much to achieve something with great difficulty. Therefore, he is always joyful. He is a completely perfect mystic because he is fixed in the instructions received from the spiritual master. And because his senses are controlled, he is determined. He is not swayed by false argument because no one can lead him from the fixed determination of devotional service. He is fully conscious that Krishna is the eternal Lord, so no one can disturb him. All his qualifications enable him to depend entirely on the Supreme Lord. Such a standard of devotional service is undoubtedly very rare, but a devotee becomes situated in that stage by following the regulative principles of devotional service. Furthermore, the Lord says that such a devotee is very dear to him, for the Lord is always pleased with all his activities in full Krishna consciousness. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Putale Svayamupakadamayam Darati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitam Sta Hey Krishna Karuna Siddhe Dinabande Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namaste Tapta Kansana Gaurane Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishwanaste Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Panchakalpata Yugyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Adveshta Sarva Bhutana Maitra Karuna Evacha Nirmamo Nirahankara Samaduka Sukha Kshami Santushta Satatam Yogi Yatatma Jita Nishchaya Mayapita Manobudhir Yomad Bhakta Sane Priya. One who is not envious, but who is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, who is free from false ego and equal both in happiness and distress, who is always satisfied and engaged in devotional service with determination and whose mind and intelligence are in agreement with me. He is very dear to me. Our title is How to Pass Life Tests or something. Well, this is it. This is the answer of how to pass life's tests. There we go. That's it. So life's tests, there's a well-known personal growth book called The Road Less Traveled by F. Scott Peck, written in the 70s. Like for modern personal growth books, it's regarded as like a seminal work. It spawned a whole generation of personal transformation books. Anyhow, he's a psychiatrist, probably passed away by now. But yeah, he's a psychiatrist, and the first line in his book is, "Life is difficult." Okay, meaning like, okay, so the first how to pass life's test is accept that there will be tests. Because he goes on to say, F. Scott Peck goes on to say, life is difficult. Once we get that, life is no longer difficult. Because we don't get it. If we don't get that life is difficult, if we don't accept it, no, there's a distinction between acceptance and resignation. But I accept life. Because if we don't accept and get that life is difficult, then my goal in life is, I'm gonna arrange things so life won't be difficult anymore. If I'll just, if I get that 10% raise, if I could just get the roof fixed, if I could just get him to stop speaking that way, then life won't be difficult. I'll be happy, fulfilled, and free. So that's a recipe for a lot of mental health difficulties. No, that's it. Because that's it. So life is difficult. Okay. Yeah, there will be wars between countries and in our own mind and between people like that. There will be conflicts, difficulties, from the mind and body and from other living entities, and difficulties coming from the cheating propensity, and should be difficulties coming from birth, death, old age, and disease. Difficulties coming from eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And difficulties coming from our own body and natural disturbances. So life is difficult. So to get there will be tests, and not to be shocked and amazed. Like I can't believe life is rough. Can't believe that. I mean, I didn't sign up for that. Okay. So then, then we will suffer. Then we will suffer. We'll be constantly shocked and surprised and suffering. Okay. So, yeah. So then, now also like we can think of life's test as when like things are going really, in a sense, every moment is life's tests. Okay. We think when things go terrible, when there's when I had this whole script written and it's not going according to script at all, that's life's test. But with the joke is, you want to how can we make God laugh? The answer is make a plan. Okay. Okay. So okay, things aren't going to script. It's a tragedy. It's a catastrophe, and there are real tragedies and catastrophes. Yeah. Later today, I'm going to be visiting a friend who's in the process of leaving his body, probably within a few days. So that's wow, someone's dying. He's not that old. But the thing is, it's always life's test if we're awake. It's So his life's test. So Queen Kunti prays. Janme Shashutashigir Edamanamada Puman. Naivarat Yavidatum. By Tom Kinchanaputra. Queen Kunti prays. Oh Krishna, let me always be tested. Let me, because what she's praying is, yeah, let the calamity, because she went through lots of tests, lots of severe calamities along with her 5 sons, the Pandavas. So what she's saying to Krishna, that when things are tough, when things are rough, and they really had some heavy drama, her and her sons. We won't go into the details about that right here. We said when things are tough, I remember you intensely. I remember you intensely. So that points to, from some point of view, the real life tests are when things are going pretty nice. Things are going according to the script. Hey, I got the job I want. I just got some relationships are going well. The weather's nice. Because then there's a danger, then there's the risk that we become complacent about our self-realization. It's like, what's this whole thing? The material world's a temporary place full of miseries. What? I'm going to the Springs today. This was, okay. So when things are going pretty well, my health is good, and I have nice friends, then we can become complacent. So that's a test. That's a test. I would say, okay, when Dominique came up with the title for this, and so
Laura requested it.
Who did?
Laura
requested. Okay, thank you, Laura. Maybe she'll appear today. She appeared yesterday at the graduation. Just about 3 hours late. It was pretty good. Okay. Excuse me, Laura. Her and I, we have a nice, we have a playful relationship. So thank you, Laura. Yeah. So when I first saw the title, one verse immediately came to mind, and it's a verse from Bhagavatam, and that's why I chose this verse, because Prabhupada references that verse in the Gita verse, because generally we read Gita verses. So the verse, Prabhupada quotes the first line, the verse is, because for me that is the verse that answers that question, that responds to the question. Sometimes response indicates a more open-ended spirit of discovery. Answer can be narrow. But that is the verse, the Prabhupada's teachings. Tatena kampam susamikshamana punjana eva makritam vipakam vivad purbir vidan namaste jivite mukti pate sadayava. So Prabhupada reference, Prabhupada goes into a role play there. He says, here's how a devotional consciousness thinks. Here's how a true devotee thinks. Cultivating the mentality that whatever happens, whatever life throws at me, first of all, saying, life, it's not like life's throwing it at me. I'm the source of it. I'm the source of it. I attracted them. And Prabhupada said the real devotional mentality is, actually, I deserve much worse. Whether things are going so-called good or so-called bad, and there's a verse by Lord Chaitanya teaching to Sanatana Goswami. And Lord Chaitanya says, Dvaite Bhaja Bhajagana Sabhu Manudharam. He says this idea of good or bad on the material platform, says it's all nonsense, it's all a mistake. It's all a mistake, it's all bad. Now, and we can make it all good in the absolute sense. By responding to it, by whatever comes my way, whatever is happening in my own mind, my body, relationships, finances, whatever comes my way, I respond to it by deepening my enthusiasm to fulfill life purpose, to cultivate pure devotional service to God. Pure devotional service to God. That's the ultimate responsibility of the spirit soul. So that's an essential response. That okay, life is challenging, or life is gone smooth, whatever. Each moment is a test. How effectively am I deepening my inspiration and enthusiasm to intensely serve Krishna through serving Krishna's pure devotee? Srila Prabhupada? How intensely am I cultivating that mentality? Okay. And okay, sometimes we talk about 3 dimensions of responsibility. So how to pass life test, and let's call it more secular language, by responding with responsibility. Okay. We can deconstruct that a bit to see what does that mean. So 3 dimensions of responsibility. 1, emotional or experiential responsibility, where accepting I am the 100% uncontested source of my experience. Well, I'm resentful because I'm angry because I'm depressed because I'm sourcing depression. I'm bitter and hostile and jealous and envy because I am the creator of jealousy and envy and bitterness. It's not because of anything. It's not wrong that I'm doing it. It's just that's foundational experiential responsibility. I am 100% the source of my experience. 100%. Between stimulus and response, there's a moment of choice, and whatever the world did, whatever this one or that one did, whatever the stock market's doing, in that moment of choice, I get to respond in a trillion. I can respond with hatred, with compassion, with humor, with love, with apathy. I'm 100% the source of my response. So how to pass life test, respond with, this is in ordinary terms. So there's experiential responsibility and then there's practical responsibility. To look at, okay, what did I do or not do? What did I say or not say? To set that up. Practical responsibility. In the second edition of Relationships That Work, The Power of Consciousness. The forward is written by Peter Burwash. And he was a professional tennis player, and he's the owner, founder, and manager of the biggest tennis teaching company on the planet. He coached Serena Williams, amongst others. Maybe some here have heard of Serena. She's a big tennis player. Anyhow, so Burwash, he wrote in his foreword, and this is why I asked him to write the foreword, because he had an interaction with Srila Prabhupada. I would say 1976, maybe 1977, in Mayapur, in Mayapur, India. And because in 1995, Burwash was in Alachua, and I had a conversation with him, and he told me this story, and I wanted him to include it. Now, in the foreword, he doesn't mention Prabhupada, but he says in spirit, he talks about how he was a very self-centered, self-absorbed person in life. And then he said, and then he met a spiritual teacher who told him the 2 most profound things he ever heard, the 2 most important things he ever heard. And it was Prabhupada. That said, Burwash was he had been cheated. He had been cheated in business by a so-called friend. So Prabhupada told him, he said 2 things. 1, spiritual life begins when you understand the law of karma. 2, don't be angry at the instrument of your karma. So that's how to pass life test. Okay. So karma essentially means responsibility, which is interesting because the normal conventional misunderstanding of karma is that, it promotes a victim-y approach to life. It's my karma, what did I do? It's happened because of karma. The actual understanding of karma is the opposite is true. Karma. First, I created my karma, and I get to change my karma. Bhagavad Gita deals with 5 subject matters. Ishvara, or God, Jiva, or the spirit soul, that's us. Prakriti, material nature, time, Kala, and karma activity. Of the 5, 4 are eternal, and 1 is temporary. And the one that's temporary is karma. Karma can be destroyed. A few years ago, we had a program here entitled "Destroy Karma Forever." You had some mighty warrior picture on the Facebook page. Yes. So great. So how do we destroy karma? By being conscious. In the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada talks about karma being temporary. So we can change our karma, we can transcend it, we can destroy it. And he doesn't, in that part of the introduction, he doesn't even talk about developing love for Krishna or bhava or prema. He simply talks about simply by knowledge, simply by sattva, simply by conscious living, we change our karma. Okay. So practical responsibility. And then spiritual responsibility, that's the tate nukampam susamikshamana. Spiritual responsibility. Like practical responsibility is looking at, how did I set this up? How did I co-create this? Spiritual responsibility is how come, albeit less than consciously, how come I co-created this with higher powers? How come I co-created this with higher powers? Okay. And we all get to realize our individual response. The ultimate response is that, that I'm co-creating the situation with Krishna and Krishna's representative to support and inspire me, either through inspiration or pain or whatever, to realize who I am as eternal spirit soul, and to realize that the material world is difficult, and to, in a sense, to get out of this place through pure devotional service. That's spiritual responsibility. That's spiritual responsibility. Rupa Goswami writes, Ihayasya harer dasya karmana manasa gira nikilas bhakti vastasu jivan mukta sa uchyate. That in that consciousness, in that mentality, then we are liberated. It's beyond heaven. It's way above heaven. We don't need to wait till we leave this body to be liberated back to Godhead. So actually that pure devotional mentality, and Prabhupada starts his purport by saying, coming again to the point of pure devotional service. The Lord is describing the transcendental qualifications of a pure devotee in these 2 verses. So coming again, meaning that this is the part of the Gita, because for 5 verses, Krishna gives a progression, right? He starts with verse 8 about pure devotional service, just full 100% absorption in devotional service to Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. And then Krishna goes, can't do that, do sadhana bhakti. You're not ready for that? Okay, then do some karma yoga. You're not ready for that? Okay, not ready. Okay, just serve your nation, serve something bigger than yourself, and that'll eventually lead to something transcendental. Even if you serve something that's something. Okay, so it goes progression. And then in this verse, Prabhupada's making the point, now Krishna's going, okay, back to the pure devotee. Here's their quality. So the pure devotee, because this like spiritual responsibility, we all, it's pretty common. Pretty common. Life is, last night at the graduation, we heard many people share about tough life tests, or tough tests in the seminar that magnified their very painful life tests. And then it was terrible, it was horrible, and wow, I learned so much. And that's, pretty much anyone with a drop of wisdom knows, okay, that was tough, and to not just stay for too long into blaming and poor me, and there's no God doesn't like me, and this one's like to look at what's my lesson here, right? So that's nice. And then the pure devotional, the pure devotee, it's spontaneous, it's instantaneous, it's immediate. Because it's one thing like, yeah, yeah, that thing that happened to me 20 years ago, I can see there's a lesson there. Yeah, 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 I guess I can begin to drop my anger after 30 years because I can see, so the full devotional platform is spontaneous, whatever is happening, immediately realizing Krishna's hand behind it, the opportunity for self-realization, for deepened devotional service. So that can be a gauge of where we're at. Are we on the, after 30 years, I learned a little something, and we can just honestly assess where we're at, and like that. And then as we progress, we can say in devotional life or in more as we progress in wisdom, because lack of wisdom is seeing how other people are bad to me, and I'm perpetrated on, and I'm victimized. And the wisdom is beginning of wisdom. It goes the other way too. I victimized others, and I've endeavored to exploit others for my means, grossly or subtly, like this. So, the invocation of Ishopanishad. Om Purnam Adaha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachite Purnasya Purnamade Purnameva Vashishyate. Everything's perfect and complete. So one realization about that. Everything's perfect and complete, and Prabhupada emphasizes in the purport, also in this material sphere. How are things perfect and complete here in the material sphere? Doesn't seem perfect and complete. Seems like a pretty terrible place lots of times. Have you looked at the news recently? What do you mean perfect and complete? Perfect and complete opportunity for my self-realization. Okay, Chittakanteya Dukahalaya. Ashashvatam Natnuvanti Mahatmana Samsati Paramam Mama. This world is a temporary place full of miseries. Trying to get enjoyment here is like a fish out of water. Abrahma Punar Loka, Punar Vartanarjuna Mama Pekti Tukanteya, Punar Janmana, from the highest, even from Brahma's planet where things are really nice. I mean, they got heavenly pleasures. I mean, but Krishna saying, even there, it's life. Even there, life is difficult. Down to the lowest planet. It's a repeated birth. Wisdom, knowledge. 13th chapter Bhagavad Gita. Janma Michi Jiravadi Dukado. No, Janma Michi Jiravadi Dukado Shantarshi. Realizing the inherent unnaturalness, the inherent evil of being stuck in a body that's forced to birth, death, old age, disease. So coming to this realization, at least approaching it, where whatever happens, as Krishna says, one is joyful, one is satisfied. I continue with increased enthusiasm in devotional service, the natural function of the soul, to surrender to God with pure devotion. So whether things are going good, bad, by my material estimation. Yam hinapyati antyate, pusham pusharshapa, samaduka sukham dira, yomitapaya kalpate. Krishna says, one who is not disturbed in happiness and distress, and who is steady in both, such a person is eligible for liberation. 15th chapter Bhagavad Gita, Krishna emphasizes, man mohajita sangadosha. Jatna nitya vinivrita kama, van ver, it's Sukhaduka Samgir, Gajantya Muda Padama Vyayanta. He says the back to Godhead mentality starts with humility and knowing how to surrender to that supreme person. Being done with material lust, equal in material happiness and distress, and knowing how to respond to any situation by surrendering to the Supreme Personality of God. So we might say, well, I'm far from that spontaneous platform. We use this term spiritual responsibility.
That's, yeah. And we had many processes. Some of you have been through the Sofitel program, through different processes about examining spiritual responsibility. Taking a look at how the worst curse, the worst tragedy in my life, the worst trauma, the most humiliating, whatever. Okay. And empathizing with ourselves, empathizing with others, and cultivating a perspective. What's my lesson there? And coming to the point where we spontaneously see Krishna's hand behind it. We spontaneously see Krishna's hand. Now, in this process, we want to be cautious to not go into a spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass means, like, let's say something so-called bad happens, something bad happens. And we immediately go to, oh, I know it's God's plan for me. I know it's God's plan. So, oh, wow, yeah, you're a very godly person, you're a very spiritual person. But it can be artificial. It can be artificial. Because in the emotional, experiential responsibility, the practical responsibility, there are important lessons to learn. And if we skip them in the name of, oh, I know it was God's plan for me. Okay, have I taken a look at what I did to set that up? Maybe oh, it's God's plan for me, and I'm still holding on to this toxic resentment. And I didn't learn the lesson of how what I said or the way I behaved provoked that person to treat me in that way. There's many lessons to be learned on those more foundational platforms of responsibility, emotional and practical. If I skip them and go to God, then I don't learn those lessons, and I continue in the cycle of birth and death. So Prabhupada mentions towards the end of the purport that this spontaneously responding to life's tests, naturally, with an A triple plus, Prabhupada says it's very rare. It's very rare. It's undoubtedly very rare. But a devotee comes to that platform by rigorously, humbly, steadily following the regulative principles of sadhana bhakti. And in those regulative principles, of course, there's like some things to stay away from because they get in the way of that pure devotional consciousness, and some things to positively cultivate. Cornerstones of positive cultivation are being in associations, sangha like this, where we're discussing transcendental philosophy from books like Bhagavad Gita, and of course, steadily, rigorously with, well, the recommendation is with a numerical vowel, saying Nidraha Harakadi Digital Chajanta Dina Chaya Radha Krishna
Aharnisha
Gunasmiter Madhuriman Andena Samohita Vande Mudasanatana Kalashuti. Prabhupada cites the 6 Goswamis that they offered obeisances, they chanted Hare Krishna with a numerical vow, even though they didn't need to because they were on the spontaneous platform, but they were inspired to. It's their service. Set an example for us. And so by such devotional activities like this, they conquered over sleeping and eating and were always meek and humble, fully enchanted by the service of Radha and Krishna, by the worship of Radha and Krishna. Okay. I'll read the verse again. Adveshta sarvabhutana maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirankara samaduka sukha kshami santushta satatam yogi yatatma jita nistaya mayarpita manobudhir yomad bhakta samepriya. One who is not envious, but who is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, who is free from false ego and equal both in happiness and distress,
who is always satisfied and engaged in devotional service with determination, and whose mind and intelligence are in agreement with me. He is very dear to me. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your presence and attention. I welcome at this time any questions, comments, inspirations, realizations anyone would like to ask or share.